Okay. Item number 4 on the discussion agenda, the first of this discussion agenda items, is motion that the Common Council concurs with the mayor's recommendation and approves the following appointments of City of Oneonta residents to city boards and commissions. For the Airport Commission, John D. Reichel, with an expiration date of August 2025. Do I have a motion to approve? Len, followed by, I'm going to say Cecilia, and discussion. Let me give you a
Actually,
bit.
yeah.
You
So
want
I
to
met John the other
Nice.
day,
Go ahead.
nice young man, was highly recommended by one of his professors to put his name in the hat, and I guess he did well in the interview process with the mayor, and so the commission looks forward. They've already did the welcoming and took him around the airport. It's a lot of information to dispose on someone, so we'll have to go back and re-educate him on all the stuff at the airport. But yeah, he's very excited about participating there.
And the folks from the Airport Commission that had spent some time with him were really impressed. They each individually connected with me to tell me as much. This is a great thing, too. We're talking about, as a Hartwood College student, he's promised to give us, as we've already had another Hartwood College student do the same, guarantee us 10 meetings out of 12. Which, quite honestly, given our boards and commissions, if we can get 10 out of everybody every year,
Right.
we're in good shape. And he is just jazzed, which is, so that level of energy is really kind of a cool thing to be bringing to the Airport Commission, especially in this moment, and there's so much going on. So hopefully you'll all approve him. Further discussion? Yes, Don?
Yeah, it's a very short appointment. Why is that? August of this year.
Partial term. It's just filling a partial term, so he could be reappointed for a full term at that time.
So he's filling it, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on this? All right, well, let's take a vote.
Councilmember Mosher Campoli.
Aye.
Councilmember Welch Russo.
Aye.
Councilmember McHugh.
Aye.
Councilmember LaPrice.
Aye.
Councilmember Carson.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington.
Yes.
Councilmember Forrester Rothbart.
Yes.
Councilmember Councilmember Matheson.
Yes,
Terrific. Jack, if you're watching. All right, so motion number 5, that the Common Council approves the following resolution. A resolution requesting the New York State Legislature to enact legislation authorizing the City of Oneonta to impose a hotel or motel occupancy tax. Whereas, the City of Oneonta provides essential municipal services, infrastructure maintenance, and public safety initiatives that benefit both residents and visitors. And whereas tourism and overnight lodging contribute significantly to the local economy, increasing demand for municipal services. And whereas a hotel or motel occupancy tax would provide a dedicated revenue source to help support these services without imposing additional burdens on local taxpayers. And whereas the authority to impose such a tax requires specific enabling legislation from the New York State Legislature, and whereas the similar occupancy taxes have been successfully implemented in other New York municipalities, providing additional revenue for essential services, and now, therefore, be it resolved. But the Common Council of the City of Oneonta as follows. 1, the City of Oneonta formally requests that the New York State Legislature enact legislation authorizing the City of Oneonta to impose a hotel and motel occupancy tax rate at a rate not to exceed 6% of the per diem rental rate for each room occupied. The revenue, number 2, the revenue generated from this tax shall be deposited in the city's general fund to support municipal services, infrastructure, and other essential expenditures as determined by the Common Council. 3, that the city clerk is hereby directed to forward copies of this resolution to the Governor of the State of New York, the Speaker of the New York State Assembly, the temporary President of the New York State Senate, and the members of the State Legislature representing the City of Oneonta, requesting their support and sponsorship of the necessary enabling legislation. And then 4, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption. Do I have a motion to approve? I've got Elaine, followed by Katie, and discussion. Don?
so is this motion just to ask the legislature if we can do it, then we would have to
This moves
discuss it
to,
and
this
vote it.
moves to the legislature.
But if they agree.
Don,
they'll-
Don, just to truncate it, we had a request from our legislator that before he would move forward, he wanted to have a confirmation of support by the common council before they drafted the legislation and brought it to the legislature. So this is a preliminary to indicate to our elected officials that this is something that the city as a whole supports. And they wanna make sure that the city actually wants this and there's approval by the council before they would bring it to the legislature.
And-
So this is a preliminary, you can still vote however you wanna vote on it when the time comes. But this is just to indicate to the legislature that there's sufficient, interest on the city's part to have them generate a bill to bring to the legislature.
Thank
And,
you.
and with this, with the council's approval of this motion, then I'll be moving this motion to the state senator's office. They'll begin drafting a bill. They'll also share that with our assemblyman, so that it might be introduced in both houses. And we might be able to take advantage of a window that's, rapidly closing.
But then it'll come back to the council for a
It
final
will
vote.
absolutely,
That was
yes.
my question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, also, just from looking at this, it looks like, this does not lock us into a percentage either, cause it sounds like we can go up to 6%
That's correct.
with this, correct?
That's
Okay,
absolutely
thank
right.
you.
Not to exceed. Any further discussion, thoughts?
What's the time,
Yeah, that's going to be my question.
What's
Time- the time frame.
what do you think the time period is?
The answer is it depends on the speed. Again, if the legislature ends its session at the end of June
Hmm.
this year, so that's why we're in kind of a tight window.
Right.
Now that if we can get home rule bills out in both the Senate and the Assembly, and they get approved before the end of the session, and they are approved by both houses, and then the governor has the opportunity to either sign or not sign, and that can go 60 days after the end of the legislative session. So sometimes in the end of a session, the legislature will pass 800 bills, and then the governor will look them over, have their staff review them, and be aware of what's going on. So, but if, by doing it now, we will maximize our chance of getting it done in this year's legislative cycle. If not, then it'll get kicked over to next year.
Yes, Cecilia?
So I had two questions. First, has there been any indication that the town of Oneonta has
The
interest
town-
in this as well?
There's no indication that they are even discussing it at the moment. I've spoken with the acting town supervisor. He is going to bring it to the town board for discussion as to whether or not they would like to follow suit, but at this moment, I don't know that that conversation has happened. I don't think it has. And so that's where we're at with that.
Okay. And then my second question was, in terms of timing, when would we vote on the actual percentage if we were to approve this?
Once the statute is put in place, then the city can do whatever it wants within the timeline. It just can never act until there's a legislative authorization to allow us to generate a local law.
Okay, very good, thank you. Elaine?
So just to sum it up, it sounds like we can vote on this now, make our final decision later, but use the time that it's going through the state legislator to further consider the details that we want.
That's right. Our target is to put this in their hands for the month of April,
Yeah.
as early on as is possible.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more discussion, let's move to a vote.
Councilmember Mosher Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Welch Russo,
Aye.
Councilmember McHugh,
Aye.
Councilmember LaPari Shu,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Forrester Rothbart,
Yes.
Councilmember Matheson.
Yes.
Wonderful. Motion number 6, that the common council approves a budget amendment in the amount of $60,000 for the implementation of a downtown support campaign to assist downtown businesses in the critical summer months and beyond as presented, increasing appropriated general fund unrestricted fund balance and increasing A.6989.464 other economic opportunity and development purchase services / fees. Do I have a motion to approve? I've got Elaine, I've got Cecilia, and we'll begin discussion. I'd like to ask the council, as we have this discussion, to allow our, a couple of representatives that are kind of informing this, this proposal, to have a dialogue. If you have questions, that they be a part of this conversation, if that's all right with everyone. Is that right?
Well, we denied him an opportunity, or I should say, you denied him an opportunity.
You shut me down
We
earlier.
did. I don't know. We just took a legislative rules class. I don't know if we're allowed to have debates with the general public, but why don't we just listen to what Jeff wants to present?
Sure. If that's all right with everyone.
Shall I take the podium and microphone?
With you.
Yes, because, just because that lets people watch online.
Yep, I got you. Thank you, Kaylor. Thank you, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Doyle. I'm the Executive Director at the Foothills Performing Arts and Civic Center over on Market Street. And before I continue any further, I just want to say that I am speaking on my own behalf, and none of what I'm about to say is necessarily representative of my Board of Directors' thoughts and feelings, because when I brought this up at our last board meeting, I did not have a quorum, and our president was on vacation. Okay. So I just had a few bullet points I wanted to hit on based on Mark's proposal thus far. He and I have had several discussions about this, some of which, certainly I see eye to eye with him, and other things we differed a little. But I'm just going to read verbatim what I wrote down here. And then I also have a brief statement from Hope from Kano that I am going to read as well. Okay, regarding the funding for the bandstand/performers, it is my belief that the bandstand is in fact going to be built, and once this meeting got underway, I discovered the funding was in fact secured, and that is happening. And knowing that that is officially going to be happening, it really seems to me that there should be funding allocated for it to be used. I'm sure most, if not all, of our council members would agree that it would not be ideal to have it sitting empty and not utilized for its intended purpose, especially after the initial investment is made. I believe that the days and times that the mayor had indicated for its weekly use makes sense. He took into account not conflicting with regular events that are going on in various other locations around town, including at Foothills. Those days and times also happen to be ideal for folks who are, getting out of work, perhaps headed to Main Street for a drink or for dinner, or just not working on the weekends. I also agree with the mayor that the city of Oneonta promoting itself as a center for arts and culture is a smart move, which means having those sorts of things happening visibly on a regular basis. Now, the conversations I've had with Mark had entailed, Foothills taking on the role of booking for the Al Galadoro bandstand. And with a budget of, I believe it was $14,200. Do I have that correct, Mark?
I think that's right.
Okay. Thank you. So ideally, you'd be looking at, and this was, what Mark had approached me with, something a little bigger on Fridays, and then more like singer-songwriter duets and stuff on the weekends. But I think there's some flexibility there. I would also like to work with other local organizations, if this is approved, to say, okay, Kano, what would you like to do on these dates, and work with these other nonprofits and local orgs to just kind of get everybody involved. Everybody has a little buy-in. Now, right before we walked back in here, Len and I had started a water fountain conversation over there about, is there somewhere else for this funding to come from? And it got me thinking, well, folks are oftentimes looking for sponsors, but it's a very small pool of folks to get sponsorships from here locally. And he had also mentioned that some of the other businesses that aren't necessarily on Main Street may feel, at times excluded from some of these efforts. And I think that by incorporating some of these other organizations and giving them an opportunity to choose that weekend's entertainment and have this weekend brought to you by, attached to certain events, that might help them feel a little buy-in as well. Which actually brings me to the next topic, which was the $20,000 that was being proposed for marketing. As someone who's included in more than I'd like to be downtown business group chats, discussions with a lot of people from my fellow arts organizations, and informal conversations with plenty of local folks, just the nature of my job. I can say with certainty that there is a shared sentiment that Oneonta needs to be marketed better, or rather that it needs to be marketed, period. I think it would be incredibly beneficial to downtown Oneonta as a whole, including some of those businesses that Len had mentioned may have felt neglected in some of these plans because they're not, right here on Main Street. Following the discussions that I've had with Mayor Drenick, we had originally talked about the Greater Oneonta Cultural Alliance, which, if I'm being honest, is more of an informal strategizing meetings between myself and other, local nonprofit EDs who represent, it's Marcy at the History Center and Hope over at Kano. But he had thought it might be wise to have Goka take on that role. After further discussion, we thought it would be something that would be better sent off for RFPs. And this is just my 2 cents. I'd like to see Otsego Media be considered for this, as they are always doing so much for free to help Oneonta with nothing expected in return. And the content that they do produce is second to none here locally. That's just my 2 cents on that. Certainly there are other organizations locally who specialize in promotion, though, that I think that $20K could go a long way in the right hands. Finally, regarding the funding for Water Street, I think it's a brilliant idea, and when Jim Seymour brought it to me, it was after that first economic development meeting at Foothills. He was pretty fired up about it. I'd love to see him receive more support, frankly, but I'd just be happy to see him get any, both moral and financial support for that project. I think it'll be great. And if possible, the Historical Society getting a little boost for their nighttime alley markets, and Kano for the City of the Hills is always a plus as well. And finally, just brief comments that Hope gave me, because of course, I said, here's what I'm going to be saying at the meeting tonight. I hope you don't dislike any of it, but here we go. And so she asked me to add for her an effort for downtown organizations / businesses to host and organize arts and cultural events on Muller Plaza and on Main Street that better support businesses. For example, an organized farm-to-table weekend or First Fridays that are inclusive of downtown business and organizations such as Foothills, Greater Oneonta Historical Society, and Kano. Promoting Water Street through events is a great idea. A committee with organizations and businesses coming together to support this vision and decide how the funding is spent would be more fair. And that is Hope's words, not my own.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I was going to say a few things about FORDU's efforts, but I believe we have someone here who can do a much better job of that than I.
Kevin, do you want to speak?
Yeah,
We've established the precedent here.
a couple things to share. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. My name's Kaylor Carpenter, live at 33 Miller Street. I'm the program manager of the youth clubhouses at Friends of Recovery, dedicated to others. I believe Mayor Mark has put together a handout that has a lot of the key points of how we thought the Muller Plaza Ambassador Program was a success last summer, and especially how it built off of the success of the previous summer, 2003. So we were preparing to do it once again for this upcoming summer, and that's when we found out, I believe it was in December when it was not included in the budget for 2025. So I just wanted to use this opportunity to speak briefly to, I think, a point that maybe got overlooked when this was not passed for the 2025 budget. And I want to take you back to early 2023, whenever we were in original discussions about finding funding to do this Mueller Plaza effort. So I think some of you were a part of that discussion. And to fund Fordue's involvement with the plaza, we ended up using money that was previously earmarked for children's programming, summer programming, that was a previous contract by the YMCA. So I've always had that in mind with all of the activities that we have done in the plaza. That's why there's always been toys, there's bubbles, there's sidewalk chalk. That's why there's always been a element, especially for kids and families. Last year in particular, we made an effort to keep specific tabs on young people and families that participated in the plaza. So I think you have the total numbers in front of you. I want to highlight last summer we had 1,387 kids engaged in the plaza, 655 teens, and I counted 1,241 families that were coming all together and playing with the various activities at the plaza. So admittedly, I don't know very much about how that summer programming money was used previously. And what was the nature of that program, but I'd like to think that if the city was to try to take around that same amount of money and to do more children's programming, it would be hard to come up with that kind of numbers with $16,500. So that was my first question, though. Whenever I first found out that the plaza wasn't going to be funded this year, is I instantly emailed Mark and I say, okay, I understand them not wanting to fund the downtown renaissance and all of that, but what about that children's programming money? Is that money still there, at least for Fordue or another group to try to take advantage of it in a different way? And when I was told that money was included with the vote, I hit the panic button for a couple of reasons. One reason being because I also oversee the Oneonta Teen Center, and we have a contract with the city to provide $13,500 a year for youth services at the teen center. So I thought if the council was trying so hard to cut funding, that they would cut funding for children, that the youth services money would not be safe. So we panicked a little bit, and then we were eventually rest assured that that wasn't the case. So I do appreciate that effort. But I also want to give a little backstory too, in that finding, I think Mark and Greg, they call this unintended consequences of a vote. So Fordue had to go back to the drawing boards, knowing that money would not be there for 2025 like we anticipated it would be. And that was a big factor in our decision to consolidate services and pull away from the Oneonta Teen Center. Since then, LEAF is on board to work with that and take over the Teen Center. Both organizations are going to be in a good place, but it was kind of bleak there for a while. I think you had some youth actually come to the meetings and speak on that. So I am delighted that there's interest to renew this venture with the plaza. Fordue would be interested in resuming operations and building off of the successes and the lessons that we've learned in the past 2 summers. But I just want to leave you with the thought that whatever next steps are, to please keep in mind that money for children's services was a part of the package, and I wouldn't want to see that disappear.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, I'd like to move this to council consideration. The only thing I was going to say, and I'll say just now, is that I'm hoping that there's a good dialogue around this, and what I try to do with some assistance from a couple of folks that are directly invested in this is to just generate some headers of the things that you might find useful discussion topics, so that we can find ourselves to a place. And so with that, I'll open the floor to the council. Yes, Don.
I would like to remind the council that we voted on this before.
Yeah.
Did you have something to say?
No, she just,
No, I just want to
Winding
make
up.
sure the mayor, he was looking down. I want to make sure that I have a chance to speak.
go ahead,
Your
Don.
mic, actually.
Yeah,
I think
go
you
ahead,
need to
Don.
move
You
that back.
probably need to.
So I'd like to remind the council that we voted on this earlier, and it failed. Last year, would go by every day to check on how things were going, and I spoke to almost all of the retailers on Main Street, and there was no measurable return on our investment last year for this kind of a thing. At the time when we're spending maybe like $1.5 million more than we're taking in, I don't think this is a good thing for us to do. I would also say that we have several very expensive items coming up that we're going to have to consider, which will also be in addition to our approved budget. I think the big one would be Tyler. There could be others. So if you look at the big picture, in my view, I think this would be a waste of money. I don't believe the city should be paying Kyler to sit in Muller Plaza. I do think we should give we should approve the $13,500 for that program, but he would be better. His services would be better used by dealing with the youth rather than sitting in Muller Plaza. It's an opinion, but as far as the return on investment last year, we did not get it. The retailers did not see any measurable change.
Thank you.
Just from the Renaissance program, I think, is what we were meaning. Is that what you're insinuating? Because this is not the Renaissance.
I just for the sake of the decorum, we'll take our turns. Cecilia?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that this is like what we received tonight is, I think, a more polished draft of what we reviewed in the Finance Committee. And I think it's a more persuasive account for why this should be considered strongly by the council and approved by the council. And in particular, I just want to draw the council's attention to the third item, the crime prevention through environmental design. And I just want to share personal experience from this past weekend where I spent time in a small city outside of New York State. And this city has had longstanding concerns and real challenges around the unhoused, the homeless. And they don't seem to have, at least from kind of surveying the street level, the pedestrian traffic, they don't seem to have a good handle on it. And I really want the council to consider, if we don't have the appropriate, what is sort of a common term used, eyes on the street, the kinds of social problems that could eventually seep into Mueller Plaza, actually probably pretty quickly, that I think this plan speaks to appropriately, and I think convincingly. And I think it would show to the public, given that Main Street is our public face for the city, it would show to the public that we have an activated space. And I disagree with the characterization that it's just somebody sitting there. It's not what really seems to occur in that space. And that's not just anecdotal. I think if you actually look to see the description that's given here of what actually is done, what Fordu provides, it's not just sitting. So I respectfully disagree that it's just a mere simple activity. I think that the ways in which this plan could fend off potential social problems from festering in that space is significant. So I just would like everybody to consider that. It's a small point here, but I actually think it should be amplified.
Elaine?
And that's actually the point that I wanted to pull out here. I think the fact that there is, that you've spoken to businesses and you got no return, that might be positive here, is that, that there was, less, presence of, the homeless folks, in the downtown, and like Cecilia said, it could very quickly, I think, without a consistent presence there, become more of an issue that we hear about from the downtown businesses, because we know that that is something, that they're concerned about. And I do know that this is something, that like when I drove downtown last summer, every single day I drove by, there were people hanging out, there were people enjoying it, especially on the hot days, there were kids playing all over, and there was a lot of positive goodwill about that whole experience. So I think, you know, the proposal today addresses some of the concerns that, you know, council had last year with how it was organized. You know, it seems like, you know, it's getting more focused. And, you know, I also want to pull out, like, Kayla mentioned about the children's program money. Like, one of the other things I see in here that I think is really important is this youth employment program. Is that with
That's
CDO
CDO.
workforce?
CDO, yeah.
Okay.
It's not anything we need to pay for.
No, it's not that we do that, but I think there was some facilitation of that program providing services in the plaza that otherwise would not be possible. Is that, okay. So I think that's a really important part. I know that youth employment program is, you know, a very beneficial thing for young people when we talk about, you know, investing in our youth and creating opportunities for, you know, young people to grow up responsible and learning the things that we want them to. This is the kind of program that can get at that. And I think that's really the biggest thing, is that I really, you know, think, you know, between the argument for, you know, programming that is going to, you know, address the needs of our youth and our families, and also address the needs of our businesses downtown, you know, by, you know, having our presence there and occupying that space.
Yes, Mike.
I think this makes sense, but I think we need to think carefully, as Jeff alluded to, about how to improve the synchronicity between arts performances or activities on the plaza and local businesses. Because I can see a realistic situation where people come downtown and do stuff in Miller Plaza, but that doesn't mean they necessarily shop. Or the people who shop already will continue to shop. Like, so we need to think two things about the audience. Yes, we want to bring like our community in, but we also we want to bring people in from Milford and Otsego and so on, or baseball families. Because yes, we need to buy local, but if we're just the same 14,000 people buying locally, you know, there's a limited amount of money that we're going to spend. So the visibility of arts is important, but especially doubly so with construction happening, that we need to. I don't know what the right way to do it is, whether it's the billboard on I-88 or what, but you know, like we need to like find ways to let people know what's happening and bring people in. The second thing is that if we think of this more broadly as a community of focal point, like if you think about all the kinds of things that happen in different places, you know, that like, I don't know, like some high school group has a car wash, like I don't know that Miller Plaza is necessarily the right place for a car wash, but you know that, but maybe Dietz Street is, like, I don't know, that I'm sure there are a ton of amateur musicians around who would love a chance to have like an open mic or something that's kind of different from what you're doing, but could maybe work in conjunction with it, you know? Just like things so that we're working in multiple directions at once. And I think to be successful, we have to do that. And I really do think that getting the downtown merchants connected to your planning is important.
I'm going to jump in and then go to Scott. So just, it was great observations. The first of those is about a tree falling in the forest and no one hearing it, right? So a third of this proposal, and again, this is the same dollar amount, not adjusted for inflation, it's the same dollar amount that essentially the city has provided to merchants associations for generation, you know, year in and year out. But marketing is, we had this Economic Growth and Sustainability Task Force meeting, and one of the major pieces that come out of that, the consensus was, oh my God, you guys, we need to do marketing. If we do something and only a few people know about it, you'll only have a few people there. The other thing we need to do is we need to cross-promote. So businesses that, to Don's point, which is not 100% inaccurate, I can contest a little bit of it, but not all of it, certainly. It didn't really move the needle a lot for businesses, and that makes sense because the businesses are, if you're on Elm Street and you have one person in your business and it's you know, you're not leaving to see what's going on and how you can take advantage of it. a block and a half away. However, some entity that's invested in the marketing, the cross-promotion of various merchants to what's going on, either mostly in the plaza, maybe on Water Street, maybe, however it may play out, that winds up being something that likely is generating of some support for the businesses that otherwise wouldn't have happened. So there's that, and, gosh, I've talked so long, I forgot what your second point was. That tends to happen around me these days. What, could you just give me what was your second point? I'm sorry, Mike.
Business synchronicity with business.
Yeah, so maybe I just covered it.
And reaching out to different, like, all kinds of groups, not
Right.
just sort of professional.
Right. So I'll wrap up and then go to Scott. So in the past, and for years upon years upon years, we've given a merchants group $60,000, $70,000 in certain cases, and said, please do good stuff. There hasn't been a whole lot of specificity about what they're going to do, nor has there been a lot of council input into what those things are. So we've had some things that were more, interesting maybe, but maybe didn't really talk about moving the needle, certainly didn't move the needle for our downtown. So all of these things are much more specific in terms of how is that money being used, but most importantly, I think, is that for the first time, we're talking about taking a reasonable amount of money and moving it to somebody who knows what they're doing for marketing, which, to Jeff's point, I think is probably an RFP. Now, I'm sorry, Scott, you're all.
Just a question, when's the stage gonna be up and running?
June, what do we figure, the second week of June?
So this will be from second week of June until, when we'll stop the last performance.
I think it's mid-September. We're basically following the same calendar as we did last year. And of course, the weather is likely to be warm enough. Yes, Cecilia?
I just wanted to also point out two other points of support for council consideration, which is that we could see this as a temporary solution, that this isn't happening, we don't have to think about this in terms of a long-term project, that this is really a case-by-case solution to this problem. And I think, to be perfectly blunt, until the Oneonta Hotel has been refurbished, along with the additional empty storefronts that are now just papered up, until those are dealt with and have actual functioning businesses, you have to do something about Mueller Plaza in terms of activating that space. It cannot be let go in terms of emptiness.
Go ahead, Scott.
Trying to keep my voice here, sorry. So, we invested a ton of money into that stand. Who runs it if they know? How does it get signed out?
There's no.
Sorry,
there's
just
no-
to jump in,
Yeah.
the Parks Commission was, also wondering that, and I don't think that that's been addressed with them at all, prior to this proposal.
So basically, we invested a ton of money into a product that's gonna be sitting there idle,
If we don't have it
nobody
scheduled.
knowing how we're gonna schedule anything
And that's,
in there.
I'm gonna jump in and then answer your question a little bit, and then I'll let you have at it.
Sounds like a pacemaker.
So, having somebody with a level of confidence, obviously, that Jeff.
Oh, you don't have to sell me.
No, no, I'm just saying.
Fact,
No, no,
at the
I'm
last
not.
meeting,
I'm not. Let me just
the Parks
finish what I'm saying.
Commission was wondering, and there was no answer to that, because we spent $110,000 of parks money to build the stage. And so the argument for that was, well, it was technically in the parks. So it's just, I was just
So
adding
let
on
me
to
just say-
Scott's point that there wasn't a plan. We did approve a stage for $350,000. There wasn't a plan of how it was gonna be utilized. We've been presented with something and not refuting that. In fact, I'm totally in favor. I think if anybody can work a miracle of booking like 30 shows with $14,000, Jeff knows the right choice. All I'm saying
So
for that.
Let me just answer. I was halfway through, I just went.
But you were talking to me about what I already know, so I just.
Well,
wanted
that's
to-
all good.
For expediency's sake.
Okay, so here's the deal. We need to be able to reach out to artists, because artists gets booked, and, so a delay in that is obviously compromise our ability to bring in the acts that we would like to. But what I know is that, I think echoing Cecilia's point, this is probably not something that we want to, even though we have a history of doing this $60,000 every year, we don't want to do that. The idea is that we don't want to do that. And so it's very likely that the Parks and Rec Commission, working with, other committees, winds up creating some sort of a strategy moving forward.
You don't need to sound me out.
No, I'm not trying to,
That's-
I'm
not even
just trying,
advocating for
just
that.
answering just let me finish,
But
please.
that wasn't the question. Point of order, it's hard to follow, like.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just
Okay.
please, for the sake of, let me just finish what I was saying. So, there is, I think there's a desire for everyone here, myself included, to have this be something that is self-sustaining, that has some connection to an apparatus that has been determined by the city. What that is there's conversation that needs to happen across multiple committees. That should happen. And we need to find other funding sources for it. And that, I think, alluding to what Cecilia was saying, is we don't want this to be something where we're coming back, as has been the case in the past, $60,000 every year to the city. We want to find a different funding source for this. And that might be, grants, that might be a bid, it might be any number of different things, it might be an LLC. So we want to take the time to explore that and to absolutely follow up on what it is that I feel like you're asking.
I didn't ask anything.
Okay. Yes, Scott?
I had 2 follow-up questions, just for the future. It's not really it's about this, but for the future. Great. I'm going to use the city administrator. Can we come up with a plan on how we're going to, in the future, rent this out? And I don't know and forgive me, my brain's kind of falling away today, but how much we're going to charge for an act to be in there to help offset maintenance and stuff that we're going to have to use to keep that stage going. Thank you. That's it. That was.
Yeah. Let me just, Cecilia, one thing, and then do you mind?
I think this is, to kind of piggyback off of what Scott is asking about, kind of a future conversation. I don't think it's a well-designed plaza in general. I'm just gonna put that forward, just again, for consideration. That it's an open space, and it doesn't inspire any kind of activity, which is why we have to kind of brainstorm about, here's some things we can be doing. I think more broadly, it would behoove the city and the council to think about, maybe we need to redesign the entire move, partially done it, but it seems like part of the dilemma is the design itself, and we really probably could spend some time thinking about what would an alternative look like that could be useful for everyday people.
Mike?
If we think of the stage as a amenity that people rent, the way they rent up Pavilion, I feel like that's sort of the wrong model, because people use a picnic shelter to have their own celebration. Whereas, so I would hate to see us charging people to come for play music for other people, unless it was, maybe we can think of different categories of stuff, like public performance versus a private event.
That's why I was asking the city administrator to put that
Right.
together.
Right, but,
City staff. But I understand where you're coming from.
right, I just wanted to say that we should think carefully before we start charging
I
people.
wasn't necessarily meaning it that way, but you gotta do something to maintain it, otherwise we're back in the same position where we're trying to find money to do it.
Right.
Shannon, are you looking?
Yeah, I'm just curious, I wanna clarify that marketing, it's 20 grand, and I'm assuming that some of that will go to the wonderful Jeff Doyle to market what's happening on the stage, and then is the rest of that gonna get split up, because some of the companies do videos, we're gonna need somebody else to do other types of outreach and marketing, so it wouldn't make sense to just put 20 grand or writing it up, it's a big chunk of money.
So to answer that, I think that there's a consensus, and I absolutely agree with it, even in the interim period. I've had some conversations with a few people where an RFP makes a ton of sense. And that RFP, we'd be asking for somebody who, or some entity that would wind up being a coordinator of local talents in terms of local media, engagement in terms, for marketing, but also that they provide a plan in which we can reach the day trippers, the Cooperstown All-Star Village, and our locals, and bring them all, maybe their unique messages, but coordinated messaging to our downtown. And then with, again, the expectation that that very same marketing individual or agency would be working with our merchants to be cross-promoting so that we do wind up moving the needle on our downtown businesses' foot traffic. So I think it's one entity that answers successfully an RFP with a commitment to doing all of those things and involving locals as much as is possible. Did that answer your question, Jen?
Mostly.
Okay. Katie?
I move that we split the motion. We vote on the music, talent booking separately, marketing, have a discussion on that, vote on that separately, and then Muller Plaza programming or whatever, and vote on that separately. I would like to consider them all individually. And I'd like to move that we follow the language of the original motion. We amend the dollar amount to be $14,208 plus $3,000 for the booking of talent by Jeff Doyle on Main Street and Miller Plaza as presented.
I'll second it.
So,
It's 17,608 total.
So discussion on that, or actually, there's no discussion on that. We go to a vote. I paid attention.
Split question.
Yes. All right, so the motion has been made and seconded, and the question before the council is, do we split this up and vote on things uniquely, or do we consider it to be a holistic package that needs to be addressed that way? And I think we can probably move right on to a vote.
I actually have questions about it.
Yes.
So I'm just looking at the costs here. Where is the, I don't understand where you're getting, there's 3,000 and 15,000.
Was it 15? It was 14,208.
Oh, for Jeff Doyle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's, I think, 1,000 and change for Kano the following weekend.
Okay, gotcha. That's fine.
So
I would include all of the
It's 16.5. And if you wanted to
15, right?
She's doing Jeff, Keno, and then the. Yeah.
I would like to consider that separately.
Additional
I thought I was gonna ask a question. Oh, no, the math doesn't math. Oh, no. Wait a second. 14,208. Yeah, that would be 15,500, whatever. Oh,
So-
no, not at all, like, not even close.
14,208 and 12,992.
Would be 14,500. Oh, and then Water Street is separate.
Where's the, there's a grant that's missing.
Or do, no, this is different.
Judy, I'm sorry.
I think my calculator.
It says 14,208, 12,992.
Yeah.
That's 15.
That's 15.5, but then it says safe, fun, and welcoming entertainment, 16.
That's the Fordu.
That's
proposal.
Fordu.
In the Water Street
Oh,
fund.
that's, yes, okay, I see.
And so I would,
So,
I guess.
16.5, you wanna uncouple 16.5 and 15.5.
And you're also uncoupling or not, again, however you guys decide if you want to vote on this or not, but there's $5,000 that we've targeted, as we did last year, to the holiday promotions.
Yes, I'm uncoupling that 100%.
Can you explain, like, what's the purpose for
So that we can decide singularly on those proposals.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
so what would be the benefit
So one
of
would be-
deciding individually?
I think it allows for without completely disregarding the whole thing. I'm concerned about, isolating these things to the point that we're considering them without. I really, to me, it seems like supporting the downtown through Muller Plaza, holiday planning, marketing, those go together, and if we separate them, I'm not sure how we're gonna coordinate all those dollar amounts, and if we can keep it as a motion together, we can talk about that as a package and how we would like to see those. But if we separate it out, we're gonna be talking about them each separately, and to me, I feel like it would be a stronger discussion if we can look at this whole package, continue to look at this whole package together. I mean, I disagree, so that's what we should.
Mike?
There are perhaps two questions here, and maybe this way I'm trying to get at, Katie. The total amount that we should spend and how that money should be allocated. And so maybe the question is actually, are we comfortable with 60,000? And then we can have a discussion about whether we think some more money should go in one direction or another out of this.
I think that's part of my point, is that, if we uncouple them from each other in this proposal, if we look at each individually, we don't have that ability to be fluid, between these categories in any way, and I would like to continue to, have a conversation where we can look at the whole package together.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. We still do have the ability to be fluid, because you could propose a different amount for the music if you felt like that was necessary. But it sounds like it's been agreed upon and maybe possible, so I would like to just kind of put it aside and focus on the other portions of it.
And given that this, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
given that this is kind of popped up, like, right now, like what's happening right now, maybe it is better if we agree to separate them because we don't want certain things to go down with the ship. If people are wanting to go ahead and separate them because they want different dollar amounts.
I don't mean to be a good shit, but the motion says it's a budget amendment in the amount of $60,000. There is no breakdown in the motion to say, oh, we're gonna split it here, put it here, we're gonna divide this. The motion for $60,000. You split a question because there's more than one question. You have a motion, you have a second, you vote for it, vote up, you vote down, you do whatever you want with it. And I don't think it's splitting the question is an appropriate motion in this circumstance.
No, sorry. That's what
Say it,
I'm not happy here.
you vote it down, you can vote it, you can vote, if you vote for it and pass it, then you vote against it. Somebody can make a motion to bring the other individual things up if they want, but I don't see the.
So David, we currently have a motion within a motion to. Right, the motion was actually worded, wrong. She needed to say that this was an amendment. She was amending. She was amending the motion.
Right.
We're allowed to do that.
My
She didn't
understanding,
actually
she was
say.
calling it, that she was
Yeah.
splitting, she was
Well,
splitting.
I am
That's a different
splitting the
procedure.
as presented and amending the motion, but,
So you make a motion to amend. If
I-
you make a motion to amend, different story.
all right. I don't know what the best way forward is. What I would like to do, we've been presented a large block of text. I would like to take it part at a time, but to your point, the motion is for the
Len
full amount.
kind of gave you the mechanism.
Well, I already said it, but then you said motion to split the motion.
My understanding of
Yeah.
the motion that was made, that was going to be voted on, was to split the question.
Okay.
Is that correct or incorrect?
Well,
Is that the
I-
motion
and
that
that's
was
what
made?
I asked, but.
In which
okay.
case, I don't believe parliamentarily you can make a motion to split the question on this motion because
Okay.
there's only one. If you want to
Okay.
make a motion to amend, I would suggest you make a motion to amend.
Okay,
So Katie could withdraw,
okay, I
and
withdraw it.
then just turn around, and Don agrees to it, and then just turn around and make your motion that you want to amend. I'll
Okay,
help you out.
but what I would like to
Maybe
do,
read that book, really?
I did read that.
Sorry, let's not get too sidetracked. So
What
you
I
wanna
would
make an
like to
amended
do
motion?
is amend the motion, as I said earlier, for the amount of, and I was wrong about the amount, so I'm glad we had that full discussion. It's $18,500 instead of $60,000 to consider music and entertainment as presented for Muller Plaza, Water Plaza, as presented.
I
right?
second.
Does that make
Well,
sense?
So as I understand it,
What was the
we're still,
Is that
you want to make an amendment to the motion, and we're going to split the, vote?
Effectively, it will split it, but
And-
I'll
and
just
how many-
remove.
How many
that.
ways are you going to split it?
You have to make a motion. You have to
Never
make a
mind,
motion
I
to
withdraw
amend
the
first.
motion.
It has to be a
Okay,
motion to
I
amend.
second.
All right, so Katie's
Okay.
withdrawn the amended motion, the
I
original.
withdraw.
We're back to where we were. So now you guys are, yes, Ginny?
May I just add
Yes.
one question? I just wanna make sure everybody understands the math. 16,500 is for what we do.
Yes, okay,
15,500 is for the entertainment.
yes,
And 3,000 is for the Water Street concerts.
yes,
That adds up to the 35,000,
Okay.
right?
yes.
Got
it.
I said 18,500, which is just the, but I'm not doing that anymore, so
Okay.
forget
So
it.
Continue on, Jenny.
I just want you to understand the math and the categories attached to those figures.
Yes, got it, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, so continuing, so again, so 35,000 plus destination, well, maybe it's destination only out, I hope it is, that takes care of the holidays, and then addressing marketing with $20,000 equals $60,000. Elaine?
Yeah, we were talking about marketing, just prior. And one of the things that I just wanna say in support of, having a budget that includes marketing, for this, is that I know we got a lot of requests, for marketing, and that was support that the downtown and other businesses were hoping for. So, I think that is very helpful. And I'm also, curious, cause I know there's a lot of concerns about how traffic is going to impact the downtown, as far as our, traffic, construction things going on, how parking impacts the downtown. So, I'd especially be interested if, part of this marketing could, address some of those concerns by, helping get information out about detours to downtown, where to park, things like that. And I think that's the kind of positive conversation that could really uplift downtown, because I know personally, like when I go on social media and I'm reading some really negative stuff about downtown, a lot of times it starts off with talking about parking. And so I really feel the need for a more positive voice around that, and that's something that I have been, searching for quite a long time, and I think that this would be a really great way to address that. The other thing I wanna say, when we were talking about like how can we make sure that like when there's programming in Muller Plaza, making sure that, it benefits the businesses too. And I think really part of what we, should consider with that is, just by getting people to the downtown area, it's that we're getting feet on the street and they're getting exposure. So I can't tell you, what by, in numbers, what that looks like for businesses, but I do know that getting people there is really, a boon for those businesses and beneficial. And the other thing, I'm really glad that this includes Water Street. I think that is a very exciting new venue that we have here. And, in talking about, the downtown presence and, how Muller Plaza, is organized and everything, I also want to, remember how, the Public Arts Commission is really invested, in bringing art downtown. And I think they have a really great focus, and, as we move forward, we should continue to involve them in those discussions, because I think they would love to paint the whole city if we allow them, so.
I just want to add one more wrinkle to your discussion, which is, it started off as 27 degrees today, wound up somewhere in the 60s, I think. Wonderful. We get into July and August. If you remember last year, if you remember how hot it was, and those who understand what we're facing in terms of global warming and the continuing heating of our public spaces, there were a number of times last year where, thank goodness, Kaler had brought and really invested $3,000 in change of your own money. The fee that we pay him, they invested in any number of things, including water features, and it was, they were insanely popular, especially on those very hot days. And we don't have another option currently to just easily cool down in the middle of the city. So just one more thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I totally forgot that actually cooling centers is one of the things that we've started to talk about for the Community Wellness Commission. committee, that's one of the things that we started talking about actually last summer, but realized that we didn't really have the time last year to address that. So we're starting to research that here, and I know I've gotten in contact with some folks, and it sounds like the cooling centers that exist are outside the city of Oneonta, at least in my initial research. So I think that's just something important to consider, is that, having a place where our citizens, where our residents can cool off, in public, without having to, be charged is a really beneficial thing.
Could I ask-
The mall is a cooling
Wait, hang on a
center.
second,
I
Don.
just wanna
Let
know
me
what-
just go to
In the
Katie
town.
quickly. Katie,
But that's not in the city.
I'm sorry, Katie?
It's literally promoted by the county as a cooling center. No, they don't. You can go and walk around, senior citizens do it every single day.
I'm gonna go to Don.
Yeah.
Could you tell me where the cooling centers are, because I want
Well,
to know that.
again, like I said, not in the city, and I can pull up the email, and I understand.
Yeah, I don't mean to be
Okay.
going too wild here, but aren't we?
You can let me know.
Right, right, yeah, so,
No,
so,
that's true. I can
we're
tell you.
still, we're still on the,
Then we still have,
I
then we
wanna
still have
pass that
primary
information
motion
along.
that needs to be.
that's the motion we're on, everything else has been withdrawn. Go ahead, wait a minute, I'm sorry, Don
Yeah,
spoke,
I got it, thank you.
Scott.
What's the motion that we're discussing?
Which is the original motion.
The original motion,
So
motion number
then-
6.
Can, what's the
wait.
terminology in this book? I'd like to call the question. Do it
If you just
immediately.
move, call the question.
Huh?
Just call the question.
Call the
That's-
question.
That's directed to the
I
chair.
call the question.
Okay. I don't need a second,
You do
I don't get a second, so we move right.
If there's a counter motion where they ask for additional time to discuss, they can vote on that, but usually the call to question is made to the chair.
Okay, very good. Well, the chair's heard it, and the chair is calling the vote.
Councilmember Mosher Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh Russo.
Aye.
Councilmember McHugh.
Aye.
Councilmember LaParty Shu.
No.
Councilmember Carson.
No.
Councilmember Harrington.
No.
Councilmember Forrester Rothbart.
Yes.
Councilmember Matheson.
No.
Is that a tie?
That is a tie vote.
And the mayor is obviously going to vote for this motion.
Say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's appropriate at this point, I make a motion that we just, having passed the package as a whole, that I make a motion that the council give some input to how that should be allocated within the,
I second that.
And I do too.
that,
The
I
last thing.
don't know if it's a motion or not, or just request that we have some discussions, I don't know if we have to pass something out of it, but that we just have a chance to have some input on how much.
You want to move
I
to amend?
moved to the amended motion that was adopted. Thank you, Scott.
And that was seconded by Katie.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I moved to amend. I think it's a separate motion, that we have approved it, I don't wanna change that.
Yes.
But I think that not right now, what we're thinking about is the opportunity for us to think about whether we think the amount of money should be reallocated in some ways.
Yes, we amend the previous motion that we just passed.
But the motion doesn't include any specificity about.
It
The
says
the motion was
as
just
presented.
$60,000.
Yes,
It does, as
Yeah.
presented.
You
Tell
have,
us
there's
what
been
to
a
do.
motion made and approved. If you wish to amend the motion, you need to amend the motion.
Thank you. I already said this.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I do think we should take the heat relief island a little bit further. I understand that like having people down there for like crime prevention and like having eyes there.
No,
But, like,
I need to know what the
yeah.
actual motion is. I'm
Oh.
sorry, not to cut you
All
off,
right,
but two
and
separate
also,
motions.
we have a motion that wasn't seconded.
No, I
I'm
have
very
a second,
Oh, you do have a second?
depending on what the actual motion is, and it's not clear. Two separate motions have been presented. So there was, primary motion was that the council gives input to the allocation of the funds, not understanding that there was an as presented. Then a second motion was kind of insinuated that the motion is actually to amend the motion that was adopted. So I just need to know what your actual motion is.
Okay, then I move that we amend the motion as adopted in order to discuss whether the distribution
Can't
of
make a motion
funds.
to discuss.
Okay, amend the motion as adopted.
Adopted, period. Perfect.
And a second?
It was seconded by Councilmember Lepari Shu.
Oh, and then she's walked out, okay.
What's the amendment?
Could you read the motion
Sounds
to
like the
us?
as presented is the portion being amended, so.
Okay,
Well-
so we're looking at amendments, an amendment, potentially an amendment
To the as presented portion.
to the, so we have a first and we have a motion and a second. I'll still need,
If she's still seconding, we have a second. We need to wait for her to come back in.
and then we move to discussion.
Then you can move to discussion,
On the amendment,
right?
but not the discussion of the, what the amendment would generate.
Just so we can get it
In other words,
discussed.
it's not the discussion, it's that we will.
So how about I second it, then we can discuss it, and we can do whatever.
Or she's right here.
Oh,
okay.
she's here.
Katie, did your second on that motion still stand?
She just walked back in. She doesn't know what it is.
You want to
So the motion is to amend the motion that was adopted.
Yes?
Okay. Now you have a first and a second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second, we can have some discussion. What we're discussing, folks, what we're discussing is the proposed amendment to the motion to discuss what was presented. And so we're not discussing what was presented, we're discussing, do we want to discuss what was presented by, that's the motion that's in front of us? Or do we simply say we're done?
Okay.
Elaine, this is the discussion we're in.
To have further discussion, I mean, there is a point that I would like to make that I've been asking to make for like
So you're
5
vo-
votes now.
So you're voting to
I would like
discuss?
to elaborate this heat relief island.
Sure, certainly. So this is what the amended motion that's in front of the council is. Do we want to have further discussion about modification of what was presented?
No. What
Is
you
that
are
right?
voting on is, do you wish to amend the motion that was previously adopted? Not the contents. Do you wish to amend the motion?
But by amending the motion, we're saying,
No amendment has been made.
Right.
right,
This is just a
Motion
yes
to
or no.
discuss it.
oh,
Right. Do you wish to amend it? Yes
Is
or
it
no?
To
We're
discuss,
Can we just-
amending.
not to amend it, but to discuss.
To discuss
Yeah, so
amending it.
it's about this,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Kind of.
It's already amended.
okay, can we vote?
Yes, if there's no discussion on the discussion, so the question is, we're voting on this amendment, that's what we're voting on, so, go ahead.
Councilmember Mosier Campoli?
No.
Councilmember Walsh Russo?
No.
Councilmember McHugh?
Oh,
Yes.
Councilmember Lepari Shu?
Yes.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Appreciate it, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Forrester Rothbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheson?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes, so now,
Thank you guys.
so now, can I go to you, Shannon?
Yes, please. Okay. The heat relief island, I think it has like a good base. And so yes, we have the cooling station at the mall. We have some cooling stations outside of the city. But I think it's really important that we maybe build this heat relief up a little bit. I know that having them out there is like some prevention, having eyes on the streets or whatever. But maybe having access for local people, for unhoused people to go and have a space where they can feel comfortable cooling down. Because a lot of people don't have access, right? Who's
Can I-
getting over to the mall? So if we could maybe elaborate on this a little bit, not just have it be umbrellas and water heat.
Yeah, so Shannon, council, would you mind if I ask Kaylor to talk about what in fact you are doing relative to that kind of heat relief?
Yeah, so what we've done is there's plenty of umbrellas to give the plaza a lot more shade. Number one, we have up to 2 water gains, one sprinkler system, and one kind of pipe thing with buckets and splash pad, so we can set those up simultaneously if you need to. And then I also put out a giant bucket of water and throw a whole bunch of water guns in there. Throughout the day, kids will grab the water guns and shoot each other. And there's also spongy balls that they grab and they throw at each other. And then we figured out about halfway through the summer that I can have prepared each day a big jug of ice and fill it out and
Thank you very much, Kayla. Let me go to Elaine.
Yeah, so I sent council an email from Emergency Service Coordinator at Otsego County, Victor F.C. Jones. And I inquired, like I mentioned, about cooling stations, that might be available. He responded that there are a few locations within the town, but nothing specific to the city. But they are happy to update their resource list to include that, so if we, if that's something that we would like, to have designated, it sounds like there is a process for that as well.
Good. Further discussion? Cecilia?
Well, I just wanted to mention, that as a member of the Climate Smart the Communities Task Force, we can certainly, work on developing even further, that space for a cooling station and other spaces, for within the city itself. That's what I was referring to.
Okay, yeah, because I think that.
Within the city.
Indoor is important, and I know
Yes.
one of the things that we had talked about was more promotion of the pool, which is a really great resource, but there is a barrier to the pool because you have to bring 2 forms of identification, in order to be allowed access. That's a Y rule, not a city rule. But that would be something that would make it hard for someone, who doesn't have identification.
Right.
To use as a cooling center. So I appreciate that you said that this could be short term, because I would like something more developed, with regard to a cooling strategy for our community to come out of this. And I think also with regard to recreation, Kayla, one of the things that you said really, didn't sit well with me, which was that, we voted to defund children's programming by not funding the downtown programming, and those are 2 very distinct things. The children's programming, the recreation programming was defunded many years ago, and I think you may be the person trying the hardest to turn this funding into what it once was by having toys, by having the stuff for kids. It's a very different animal because an adult has to bring a child down to utilize what you've put up, and it's fun and it's cool, and especially during, we were down there during Pride and we had a really great time, and my kids saw a bunch of his friends and they played in the plaza for a long time. And I'm not refuting that, but it is very different from full day recreation programming, which is what the city used to provide, with that funding. So, what it has been for the past few years is, in my estimation, we've been handed a 2-pager and written a blank check pretty much. And I think you have really come through with your end of the bargain. It's been basically exactly what has been presented every year. I don't think it's a long-term solution. So, if that's the way we go this year, then that is what it is. And I think that there's some more thinking that we could do with regard to how to spend that funding. Like, we just approved $60,000. We could hire a seasonal paraprofessional beat cop, which has actually been asked for by business owners. We could hire someone on Parks, Buildings, and Grounds, an additional seasonal person who focuses only on Main Street, Water Street, Market Street, Deep Street, that general area, to keep it clean and inviting. I think the money for music is well spent. I think the money for marketing is well spent. I think that what we are doing with our contract with Fordu is kind of a patch for different needs that we have in the community, and you may be effective at combining all those needs into sort of one little package, but I don't know that it's the ideal solution. But in general, but it's what we got. So, I would like to say that I would like to see more. How do I want to say this? Basically, what I said in my email is I think that there's a really big missed opportunity once the summer season is over, to capture holiday travelers, people who are from the area who come back to be with their family around Thanksgiving. I know that there was an effort made by Hope on Stengel and a bunch of, few downtown business owners, and I think Cassandra Miller was involved with regard to promoting Small Business Saturday. I think that went okay, but I definitely think that there's more planning and coordination that can be around that. I spoke in my email of Reston, Virginia, where there's really like an all-day thing. That would probably cost more than $5,000. So I would like to see some of this funding shifted to that to have a stronger holiday presence, because that's a really big time for those businesses in the middle of what is a really slow season. So I'd like to consider that. I don't have necessarily a specific recommendation because it's not something that we do an RFP for anymore. We used to do an RFP, to Mark's point, for years and years and years for the full amount, and we would say to an organization, do what you can, pretty much. And when we weren't able to articulate what it is we wanted, we brought it in-house. So, sorry, just to reiterate, I think that the heat island thing is valid. I don't know if it's something that Forney would be willing and able to do on days when it's predicted to be hot, or a specific day of the week. That was one of the suggestions that I made in my email, so that we could allocate some of this funding somewhere else to a number of things that could benefit from more funding. And I would like to see, some additional money go toward the holiday parade and tree lighting, and have some specific expectations around that, and who's gonna do it and what it's gonna look like, so that we can maximize the potential of that. Those are my suggestions to the as presented.
One, go ahead.
Is the Parks Commission, are they set up to do something like this, to analyze and overlook? Because it is a park.
No, but we could give it to Lefty. No, one of the things that I would love to see happen with regard to the stage and the music, in terms of that going forward, is I would love to see the city partner with the Studio Union Music Industry Program and get interns who do this. They want to do it for a living and they need college credit for it. And they have a really great internship program. My brother has been involved in the music industry program for many, many years, and he visits all kinds of places where people are booking talent or doing sound and all kinds of things that we could, utilize people right in
Could
town.
the Park Commission, could they oversee this?
And
Because
in
here we
town.
are again, I agree with everything that you've said the last 5-6 minutes. Last 3 years, it is a Band-Aid approach. But someone needs to provide the oversight, the annual oversight. Because I think Cecilia mentioned it 45 minutes ago, the concern of not attracting families to downtown Oneonta by those that are going through a difficult period of time in their life right now, don't have a place to go, so they meander to that area. I can say that Kaler has been effective on moving those folks, taking care of their initial needs, because he speaks the language. But we took more complaints about one block north than we used to Main Street, so it's effective. So
I think that that's something that could be worked out with them, but I think it's tricky with a commission. It would probably be better if it was really under the, am I getting gavel?
No, just, I'm gonna wanna just kind of bring this back a bit, if I could. So,
So I can't finish.
you, please do finish.
I think it's something that's probably better under a city employee than a commission, because who holds the commission accountable?
So I just
Long
wanna.
story short. And I think interns could help. That's it. I'm done.
Okay. I think there is no doubt that there is a lot of work that can be done and that should be done to find a strategy for the future. I don't think Kaler has it in him to do this every year. And, what we get from Kaler and Fordu is more than equal to what we're, laying out. So thank you, but it's not a good long term. And I think that we, as in committees that are relevant and even as a council, even as individuals that have ideas, can start to work our way through to a place where, let's say 2026, we have a plan, and that gives us also time to be able to identify potential other funding sources and so forth. So we have kind of a mission to get this to a place where this is an ongoing, not dependent upon the city's budget or the good graces of those folks who've been providing the services. So I think you're 100% right, Katie.
Can I just say one thing to
Sure.
follow up? I think in terms of the city's responsibility to Main Street, there's general business assistance, which we do in the form of like the micro enterprise grants and things like that, more formal approaches. But I think the others are basically infrastructure and safety, and I don't think that booking talent, paying to book talent is really within our, I guess you could argue that it falls under the Parks and Recreation, but I don't think that that's necessarily our lot in life. And so I would like to see us in the next year focus more on infrastructure and safety around Main Street, because those are the things that are really what are concerning to downtown business owners based on this chamber poll.
So I think we've got, yes, go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Greg, throw this on the quality of life agenda. We'll start taking a look at it.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna see it bounce back and forth in Parks and Rec. You're talking about it as a commission, you'll find, as we find funding sources for this, it's gonna find its way to finance and HR. I think, and it may even find its way to legislative, who knows? Go ahead, Mike.
I just want to, hopefully in summing and also in stating why I wanted to bring this up, is that I also have some concern about sort of the blank check of, okay, $20,000 or $16,000. So some specific things that I've heard from all of you and from that I was thinking about, that I would specify that the marketing should be focused on cover three different audiences, people living within the sort of 4 counties of Otsego, Delaware, Shenango, Schoharie, baseball tourists, and residents. That the marketing should include promotional materials, a calendar of events, practical information about streets and parking, and should be integrated with other downtown programs that happen anyway, such as farmers market, Access to Wilbur Pool, cooling centers, and needs to cross-promote with businesses on Main Street. And then the last thing is that as far as programming, I think I would add to the description here, and I think you guys have been doing a great job, but I would add, it's nice to just have a sort of a drop-in all day, any day, come and do little games, but it's also nice to have some special daytime events. So I would say, if you think you have the capacity to do it as part of it, to have, they don't have to be huge, but say like 4 times during the summer, once a month, to have it like it's a water day or something like that, but something that can get put into the calendar so that it can get promoted.
I think that's all very reasonable. And I think that's gonna wind up informing, Mike, the request for proposals, which, I do believe that is the one component that we've not had and really do need to have, so I appreciate all of that. Yes, Cecilia?
Just one last point, just
Yes.
before we move on, to Mike's point about marketing. About a year ago, I got a recommendation that I passed along, and nothing came of it, but there is a group called Mohawk Valley Edge that's a private economic development group that comes to me at least highly recommended in terms of helping with kind of promotional activities that the city could be involved in. And so they may be a really helpful organization to turn to with this particular kind of programming that we're thinking about. Cool. Yeah.
I agree. I think with that, I think we've landed on some good directives, most specifically in the short term for what informs an RFP, and more appropriately, I think, as a short to long term conversation where we can make some determinations about how we can move this forward so that we are not asking again for Purdue to step up or, you know, and that we're able to address some of the kind of logistical concerns that you brought up, Katie. So I think that's a conversation that will take place over, I hope it does, over the course of these next several months, and we're prepared with something for the long term. So I thank you on this. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just ask a follow-up question?
Certainly.
So in terms of the breakdown here for the as presented, is
Yeah.
that what's going to click, or is like long-term strategy of Main Street going to click?
What was the first part? I didn't.
Is the breakdown of the as presented going to click for discussion, or is the long-term strategy for Main Street going to click, or some combination of both?
Both, because it all falls in.
Okay, cool. I really wanna see more money for the holidays downtown.
Yeah. Okay, so, so thank you, folks. I hate to say it, but I don't know that I can do this next half hour without having to hit the restroom one more time. So, so if we can break and reconvene at 9 o'clock sharp, so 7 minutes?
What presentation?
No, it's not executive session.
Is there, may I ask,
I'm
is
sorry.
there an executive session?
There's no call for one here. I have a piece of homework that I haven't gotten to for reasons I think you guys can probably figure out, and I'll take care of that tomorrow for everybody, but I don't believe there's a rationale for executive session. Right? Okay, so, yeah, so unless there is, but I don't see it, right? So we'll